And if you look with a microscope, you will find things that we agree upon. I want to say that I agree with the majority leader when he says that it is a shame, an embarrassment, that we are only debating this bill 2 months to the close of the financial year. I agree with him in his sentiments that, in fact, the debate on this particular bill is unnecessary because this is a constitutional imperative. There should be a self-executing mechanism to appropriate this money to the counties that have been, or the areas that have been marginalized for a long time. But where we disagree with the majority leader, I wish he would listen to this majority leader. I wish you would have tendered an apology after saying those things that you said, that I agree with. Because, Honorable Majority Leader, there is no one else to blame for the delay other than the current government, of which you are a member. Mr. Speaker, the person in charge of the country right now is from the Majority Leader's party. The people in charge of the National Assembly, although, of course, even after the courts ruled that Azimio coalition is the majority, the Speaker there has refused to implement. So the Majority Leader's party is the majority there. Honorable Speaker, this should be something that he takes up with those institutions when next they meet to discuss matters. In fact, Honorable Speaker, every time we debate this bill, I remind people that the constitution that we have right now has a historical context. There is a historical context to the provisions of this constitution. There is a reason why, Honorable Speaker, my favorite part of the constitution these days is actually the preamble of the constitution, because it gives background to why we gave ourselves this constitution. There was a life we used to live that we decided we were going to stop living. There are things that used to happen under previous regimes that we wanted to put an end to. There are things that never used to happen that we wanted to happen. And Speaker, allow me to just point out two things in that preamble. First of all, we recognize the pride of the Kenyan people in our ethnic, cultural, and religious diversity. And we said here that we are determined to live in peace and unity as one indivisible sovereign nation. The reason I start there, Honorable Speaker, is because of the traditional marginalization of certain areas. You go to these areas and people don't consider themselves part of Kenya. And that is why, Honorable Speaker, it is important for the preamble to recognize our diversity in that manner and to state categorically that we are indivisible, one indivisible sovereign nation. Then, Honorable Speaker, my current favorite is the values with which Kenyans wanted to be governed. I have argued in other fora that, in fact, the manifesto of the government we wanted is already here in the Constitution. You don't need to do anything else. There is a guide. Kenyans wanted a government based on 6 essential values. And the first one is human rights, equality, freedom, democracy, social justice, and the rule of law. There are 2 that I want to point out, Mr. Speaker. It's equality, social justice, Honorable Speaker. That a society has to take care of all of us, or all of its members. Article 204 of the Constitution, Honorable Speaker, must be seen in that context. That there are places that because of our previous politics, Honorable Speaker, it became necessary for us to say this is not right. And because of those values of equality, we then gave ourselves Article 204. And Article 204 is such a base requirement. I mean, it was just, I don't know how I can put it, because the language itself will tell you that Kenyans were setting an extremely low bar. And if you read, it says that the purpose of this fund is to bring the quality of services in those areas to a level generally enjoyed by the rest of the nation. When they said the rest of the nation, Honorable Speaker, they had an area of Kenya in mind. What is the rest of the nation? And who are these that were so far behind that they were not considered the rest of the nation? And that is the question we must ask ourselves. And that is why some of us had problems, Mr. Speaker, with this introduction of other areas also claiming to be marginalized. When, Honorable Speaker, the purpose of the Equalization Fund, we knew when we were saying marginalized areas, who those marginalized areas are. So it just was meant to lift the standard of these 4 basic services, water, roads, health, and electricity, Honorable Speaker, to the level generally enjoyed by other people. And there are some of us, because we swore to protect this constitution, who have stood by that, Honorable Speaker. We believe that there are areas in this country that have been traditionally left behind. Speaker, it has become fashionable in the political space right now. There are people who have just recently discovered that Northern Kenya exists. And me, personally, I have a theory, Honorable Speaker, that after the falling out, the political falling out in the current administration, especially after losing a big chunk of the support from Mount Kenya, people have been forced to discover Northern Kenya. People have been forced to discover that Western Kenya and Luo Nyanza have not been getting certain services. Honorable Speaker, if it were not for that fallout, we would not be hearing about this road to Modogashe and Sijui where. Honorable Speaker, the people in power today were part of the original sin, the marginalization that happened under previous regimes, and everybody's history is known. Some of the people in power right now were Kanu hawks. They are the ones who put the foundation for this marginalization that has happened. So, if it were not for that falling out, we would not be hearing some of these things. But those of us who believed in this constitution from the start, Honorable Speaker, we knew that the people of Northern Kenya, the people of Western, the people of Nyanza had been marginalized, and majorly and largely because of some of the politics of our country. I will give you an incident, Honorable Speaker, because I am a member of the Energy Committee. One of the biggest fights we had was the Adani fight. Honorable Speaker, the Ministry of Energy was telling us that Adani had sent them a PPP proposal for shoring up our electricity infrastructure. Now, there is no problem with that. But the question we asked ourselves is, if you were going to get a PPP to do or upgrade our electricity infrastructure, where do you begin? There is around 13 counties, Honorable Speaker, that are not on the national grid. I was in Mandera with Senator Eddie a few months ago. We were hosted by Senator Roba there, Honorable Speaker. Mandera had no electricity when we were there because they run on generators. The Senator from Marsabit will tell you that although the biggest and largest, one of the largest wind farms in the continent is in his county, they just see those cables running over their homes. They have no electricity. In places like Menengai, they will tell you that. Speaker, would you believe that Adani was proposing that the first phase of the upgrade of our electricity infrastructure was to show up supply in Nairobi? Now, I am the senator of Nairobi. I know for a fact that there are places in Nairobi that have gone without electricity. There's a friend of mine from Embakasi Central who was telling me just today they have gone weeks without electricity. So do I want the people of Nairobi to get electricity? Yes, Speaker, I want them to get electricity. But do I also want those 13 countries who have never seen electricity from the time this country was formed to at least be put on the grid? Yes, I do. That is what equality demands. That is the value of equality and social justice that we talk about. Speaker, we want Kenyans, all of them, in accordance with our preamble, to feel that we live in one indivisible nation. So therefore, Speaker, it breaks our hearts when we see some of these things happening. And we have been told, or if you read the bill, you will see that there is an allocation of 16.8 billion Kenya shillings only, Honorable Speaker. And it's supposed to bring the levels of services to what you enjoy in Mombasa, to what we enjoy here in Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, I have done the math. Let's just start with roads, for instance, as an example. We are told that on average, we spend about between 80 and 150 million shillings to do 1 kilometer of a standard bitumen road that has 2 lanes. 150 million Kenya shillings. So if my math is not very bad, Honorable Speaker, if you did the math, 16.8 billion gets you around a maximum of 110 kilometers of road. If we decided to put the entire equalization fund into one road, it will only be 110 kilometers, Senator Khalwale. Are we really being honest about the implementation of this fund? One of the things I have advocated for, and I am sure that in the next administration, if, for instance, Honorable Speaker, we are lucky enough and Linda Mwananchi forms government, one of the things we want to do, the way there is a schedule about how much money every county receives under devolution, the equitable share. We want 47 counties. We want to see in those 47 counties how much each county receives from the national revenue. Because that is the one thing we are never told. It is possible, Honorable Speaker, that there is accumulation of government expenditure in certain areas because of certain things, and especially because of political expediency. So, Speaker, one of the things I want to promise here is that once we form government as Linda Mwananchi, Mr. Speaker, we will be publishing. Mandera must know how much of the national government resources have been utilized there. When we went to Mandera, Speaker, we complained about the state of the airport there. One of the busiest airports in Kenya has no tarmac. And you go to certain counties, I don't want to mention them, but I did mention them in Mandera. There is 2 airports within 5 kilometers of each other. It is just unconscionable. And to prove our point, Speaker, just recently, there was an accident at Mandera Airport. We are waiting for people to die so that we can build an airport in Mandera. Speaker, this issue is a serious issue, and I want us to be honest about it. In fact, one of the things I get asked every day is... point of information. On what? What?
Senator SIFUNA, do you...
Speaker, I don't know if he can tell you what he wants to inform me, because I don't usually like to be, when I'm in the middle of teaching, to be taught myself. But let's hear what he has to say, but briefly.
Yes, Senator Eddy.
Mr. I will come. Mr. Speaker, Senator SIFUNA has alluded to something very important, which I also had talked about, but I need to inform you on something here. Senator SIFUNA has alluded on the amount of money on this appropriation bill, which is 16 billion. What I wanted to inform Senator SIFUNA is that because this fund is as per a sunset clause, if you go by the math that it's done of 1.5% of the amount of money that we should get from the national government to this fund, Senator SIFUNA, this fund has got an entitlement of 79.8 billion. Now, Senator SIFUNA, what I wanted to inform you about is that since the last 2 appropriations were done up to date, that will include the 2025-2026, which we are doing today, 62 billion is the outstanding arrears that the national government has not been honored. So that between the time that this fund was founded up to now, there has only been allocation, or rather there has only been an honoring of 13 billion. I think that's information that's important to him to understand that even though we are even trying to get even the 16 billion to be passed now, 13 billion is the only amount that has been given in an entitlement of 79 billion with arrears of 62 billion. So if the 62 could be released with the fight of people like SIFUNA, myself, and yourself, Speaker, and all senators here, it could be a very significant amount to equalize Kenya. That money is big, the 62 billion that is already in arrears. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I think, Senator SIFUNA, you have been informed sufficiently. Senator Eddy is saying that although we pass the Equalization Fund Act every year, the disbursements from the Treasury are not up to date. There are arrears of 63 billion.
I understand, Speaker, because of the controversy that has been surrounding the fund. In fact, I remember in 2010, I was one of those people who said, this is one of those clauses that should not have a sunset clause, and I will give you the reason. It is not a solid argument, Speaker, to give 20 years to repair damage that has been done over 60 years. The people of northern Kenya and all these other marginalized areas have suffered over 60 years. 20 years from 2010 is supposed to expire in 2030. We need, I think, half of this house and half of the other one to pass an extension of this particular clause. It's unnecessary. Mr. Speaker, I wish, and you know, it's just that I'm not very good in math. Maybe Eddie can help me. I even suspect that these amounts that are being disbursed are not equivalent to 1.5% of all the revenue that we have collected. Because, Speaker, we have a problem, even with the monies for devolution. Because of the National Assembly being slow in approving or passing the Auditor General's reports on our revenue, we are always years back on the base amount that we used to calculate how much money goes to the counties and to funds such as this. So for a period of 60 years, you don't have roads. And then you are being given installments of 12 billion, 16 billion. It will take proper lifetimes. There's people who will die in some of these areas without ever seeing electricity or roads. And I think for me, it is unfair because they continue to be Kenyans and they continue to pay taxes. Mr. Speaker, therefore, I want to support this bill and I want to assure Kenyans that there are good-hearted people out there who had this constitution in mind, because one of the biggest tragedies, I think, is people finding themselves in power and being given a constitution to implement that they didn't believe in, they didn't support, that they actively opposed. There is no way, Honorable Speaker, there is any political will to ensure that you implement some of these things if you, from the onset, did not believe in it. So forget all these stories you hear, Honorable Speaker, about people suddenly discovering Mandera exists, that we need a road from Mandera through Isiolo. Honorable Speaker, there are people who have always known that there is marginalization. They've been part of that system of marginalization. So there's no magic. And that is why, Speaker, I continue to insist that we want in 2027 to have a values conversation. A values conversation. Once you appreciate that a government needs to act fairly, because it is a constitutional imperative of value, that a government must consider equality when they are doing certain things, then you don't need to convince me with your votes to bring roads to Mandera. You don't need to convince me to put Marsabit on the grid, because I am tied and bound by the values in the Constitution that there has to be social justice, Honorable Speaker. So when you see some of these people pushing us saying, oh, SIFUNA, how many kilometers of road will you build? Oh, I have built one stadium. How many are you going to build? I have built 30 markets. How many are you going to build? I am telling Kenyans, we want a conversation to return this country on the rail of values. And once those values are in place, Honorable Speaker, everything else falls in place.